What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down something very important about the markets. We have two big catalysts for tomorrow. We have the big guy, Jerome Powell, giving a testimony in front of the US Congress, not to mention Donald Trump, who said something very, very important for the US economy that could affect the way things are going to move for the next couple of days. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. Deposit $100 and you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. Deposits $2,000 and you're guaranteed 30, and the offer ends very soon at the end of March. Anyways, looking at the SPY charts, notice that there's a very interesting pattern where when we hit 608 to 610, we have rejected every single time historically. Okay, for the last couple of weeks, SPY hit 610, rejected, hit 609, rejected, hit 608, rejected. And during this push, we went to 605, and so far we're fighting this as resistance. So we'll see how high this ends up going, or if we end up getting a rejection. Keep in mind that SPY has this gap down here to fill at the 600 area. And if we can't break 605, we're going to be at risk of returning back down there. So whether or not that happens depends on two big catalysts. Let's talk about what those catalysts happen to be. So tomorrow is going to be Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. In the morning, we have the Business Optimism Index report, which is quite minor at 6 a.m. But then the big thing to be watching for is at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is 30 minutes after the stock market opens. We have the big guy, Jerome Powell, giving a testimony. Now, what is Jerome Powell doing? What's actually going on with this? He's going to be testifying in front of the U.S. Congress on Tuesday and Wednesday, okay? That's very important. On Tuesday, which is going to be tomorrow, he's going to be appearing before the Senate. And then on Wednesday, he's going to appear in front of the House of Representatives. So get ready for that. What's going to happen with this? Well, it's very simple, okay? We have Jerome Powell. He's going to be speaking in front of the U.S.'s Senate in the beginning. There's 100 senators, and they're going to be listening to what he has to say. He's going to give us insights about, interest rates, inflation. He might try to keep things very broad in the beginning, but then as time goes on, what's going to happen is we're going to see these senators trying to hammer at Powell, get him to say something, ask him about tariffs, ask him about inflation, what's going to happen. And we're going to have to see if Jerome Powell is going to give the market information that causes a dip or a pump, depending on what Jerome Powell says. So you have to keep that in mind. Jerome Powell might try to keep it cool, hopefully not trying to cause too much volatility. But if he's asked specific questions and he ends up saying something about how, the Fed isn't going to cut yet, or the Fed is going to cut, is the Fed going to, be very cautious with interest rates? What's the deal with inflation? What's happening with these tariffs? Any piece of information he gives us could cause a very, very big move in the stock market. Okay. And keep in mind, I'm using the word could. Nothing's 100% guaranteed. There have been some instances where Powell's speeches are just nothing burgers and he doesn't say anything. But in this case, you have to be prepared just to be safe. We've seen the market move more than 20 points in a single day just from this guy speaking. So he can move things like crazy. It's going to be very, very wild. I think what's going to happen is he's going to give his opening remarks, might not affect the market too much. And then when they hammer him, I have a feeling he's going to try his best to try to avoid the questions, try to just, speak around them. And they're going to keep asking him over and over again. So it's going to be very intense. The Fed does this like 2 times a year. So we'll see how this goes. Get ready for it. If he ends up saying something about interest rates that causes the market to shake, do expect a lot of volatility and get ready just to be safe. Personally, I don't know exactly what he's going to say, so that's why I'm going to give you guys a warning to be very cautious tomorrow once Jerome Powell opens his mouth. There's another big factor, and that's Donald Trump. Donald Trump said something very, very, very big. So far, the White House has announced 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. The U.S.'s top steel importers comes from Canada, Mexico, and Brazil. That's going to be affecting U.S. industries, and this is now incentivizing them to be more local when it comes to their overall process. But that's going to take a while for the US to develop. It's going to take a while to get that. So I do think there's going to be a big disruption in prices because of this, at least over the next couple of months. But then as time goes on, there's something else that Donald Trump said. So Donald Trump has said that any steel coming into the United States is going to have a 25% tariff. Those are his words. He also told reporters today that he's going to be announcing reciprocal tariffs likely on Tuesday or Wednesday on countries that have placed tariffs on U.S. goods. Donald Trump said that if they are charging us 130% and we're charging them nothing, it's not going to stay that way, according to him. So please keep that in mind. That's what Donald Trump is saying so far. He's going to be announcing more tariffs on more countries starting tomorrow or Wednesday, most likely. So get ready. Okay, as soon as the news came out on Friday that Donald Trump was going to make a big announcement about this, he didn't give us the specific information. He just said on Friday that he was going to make a big announcement about tariffs. As soon as he said that, SPY went from 608 and it dumped all the way down to about 600. It dumped 8 points in a very fast period of time. So my point is, the market tends to have more negative reactions to tariffs, at least initially, because of how it disrupts these industries, the effects it has on GDP and our overall inflation, and how it's going to be affecting these other countries. Because if you look at, for example, if you look at like China right now, they're trying to retaliate against the US by increasing tariffs back on us. So other countries may do the same things. This is going to be affecting US businesses and such for the short term. For the long term, Trump and his team are arguing that there's going to be good effects of this, such as bringing in more revenue for the government and to really help to offset much of the pain. But we could all agree there's going to be some short-term disruptions to prices and such as these tariffs come out, and the initial reaction of the market tends to be more negative. Which countries will be involved? We don't know for sure yet. We're about to find out, hopefully within the next 2 days. Germany is the fourth biggest trade partner of the U.S. Japan is pretty big, so is South Korea, Taiwan, Vietnam, the UK, and many other EU countries. Then we also have India, right? Even though these next countries have smaller percentages of our trade, compared to like China and Mexico. But when you take a bunch of them combined, so if you combine like Germany and Japan, that's 9% of our trade. Add South Korea and Taiwan, it goes up to about 16%, right? And add just more of these countries, that doesn't even include the EU countries, or at least all of them, right? It's already over 20 something percent. So it's going to keep on going up and up and up and up when you get like India and all these other countries. And much of our trade comes from all of them combined. And that's why it's very, very important. Donald Trump did hint that he might be including the EU very soon, so get ready for some high volatility when this comes out. So, Mr. Trump, we don't know exactly when he's going to make the announcement. Okay, this depends on negotiations, factors like that, but he is saying most likely on Tuesday or Wednesday. Within the next 2 days, he's going to be saying, hey, I'm going to be raising tariffs on Japan this much or Germany this much. And when that comes out, the market might not like it, guys. Just the announcement that he's going to make the announcement caused the market to dump. So what's going to happen when he officially announces more of these tariffs? There might be a temporary move to the downside. Remember when he made the announcement about Canada, Mexico, and China, the tariffs? SPY went from 610 all the way down to 590. It dumped about 20 points basically overnight. So you guys can see these tariffs have a big effect. So get ready just to be safe. A couple more things. We had McDonald's and Monday.com announced their earnings. I went over those in the morning. Tomorrow, just keep in mind we have Shopify, Coca-Cola, and Supermicro, Upstart, and DoorDash all announcing earnings. So get ready for some more volatility for these companies. I will report more on Shopify and Coca-Cola later on. And then last but not least, the market is neutral right now, but we'll see if we become more fearful or not, depending on some factors. Momentum's at fear right now, so we'll see if that shifts. And then we also have the put to call option ratio at greed. We're seeing a lot of puts being closed right now. If people are closing their puts at a faster rate, does this mean that the market makers will try to do the opposite and then start to push the markets back up to hurt those people? So it's pretty crazy. And the VIX is neutral. We'll see what that does. So that's my view right now. So what do I think about the charts? Here's my honest answer. SPY has to break 605 during Jerome Powell's speech or because of the next catalyst. If it doesn't do this, approaching CPI, there's going to be a risk of us dipping a bit, especially to come down to fill this gap. So please keep that in mind. Tomorrow we're going to push upon open, maybe a little bit of a push. And then if we don't hold above 602.5, I'm looking for that gap fill to about 600. And if that doesn't hold us, we're looking for 598. So 598 to 600 could be coming if we lose 602.5 tomorrow, if we get Donald Trump's announcement or something comes out from Jerome Powell's speech. If we're bullish, okay, if Jerome Powell launches the market higher, you want to see SPY break 605.4, the high of the day. If we break that, that's where we had the resistance right here and also over here. We're going to be looking for an attempt to push back up towards the 607s pretty quickly. So if 605.4 breaks, I'm looking for 607. Could go either way, guys, but I'm going to be very careful. My fear is that Donald Trump will make the announcement closer to like the end of the day. And then Jerome Powell, I don't know what he's going to say if we get a temporary push or not, but I'm looking at this gap down here. There's a chance we might come down to fill this gap right before CPI. So we'll see about that. By the way, CPI comes out on Wednesday. That's why I'm saying that, but we'll see. There's this big gap to fill, so we'll see if we come down to fill. I am leaning a little bit more in favor of that. And once Donald Trump makes the tariff announcements, I do favor downside a bit more, given the history, right? Given the fact that when they announced tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China, the market dumped. Well, as soon as Donald Trump made the announcement last week that he's going to be announcing tariffs this week, the market dumped. So I'm trying to tell you, when these announcements come out, the market tends to dip. So that is looking a little bit more favorable if Donald Trump makes the announcement tomorrow. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so that's what my view is. Just be very careful, be very cautious, especially with your trades. For the QQQ, notice something at least technically. So we hit 530, rejected. 528, rejected. 530 to 533, rejected, rejected, rejected. Every single time we hit 530 to 533 for the last couple of months, since like the last time we were actually above that was like December 18th, where we went just a little bit above that, then we got a rejection anyways. My point is, for the last few months, we tend to reject between 530 and 533. Now, we touched 530 on Friday. We actually went up to 532, came down. Today we touched 530 again, and we're just kind of sitting here. So we have to see, are we about to get some kind of rug pull or not? What's really helping this push is Nvda, but we have to be very careful, especially because Taiwan is very important for our trade. 3% of US trade comes from that, and we depend a lot on them for semiconductors. So we'll see how it goes. So just to be very frank, okay, if Jerome Powell gives us a big pump, we want to see us break 530 to push up to 533. If Jerome Powell gives us the dump and we end up losing 528, we're looking for a move closer to like 525. Donald Trump will be another factor. If he announces the tariffs and we end up losing 523.8, this zone right here, I think we're going to be revisiting this low at 522. And then we got to hold that, or else this dumps to about like 518. So there could be a bigger dump coming, basically, if Trump announces the tariffs tomorrow or on Wednesday. But that depends. We're going to first start off with Jerome Powell to see if he pumps us or not. We could go either way. I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know what Jerome Powell is going to say exactly. But when Donald Trump makes the announcement, I do anticipate and kind of favor downside a little bit more. So just keep that in mind. For the Russell 2000, we have this tough resistance at 230. Now, what's good about this is that when you zoom out, it's bullish. There's an inverse head and shoulders on it. But for the short term, it's been struggling to break past 230. 230, we just reject every single time. In this case, we're going to be fighting to see if we can reclaim our EMAs or not. So watch 227. If that breaks, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to 228. If we lose support at 226-ish, we could be dipping back down to about the 224s. So in my opinion, I think there's a good chance we kind of push like this and reject, depending on what Jerome Powell says. And then when Trump announced the tariffs, when he announces the tariffs, we could be dipping lower towards like the lower 220s. I'm a little concerned about that because when you look at this, notice this, guys. When you go to like the daily charts, if we do get a rejection and we end up losing 225, I'm going to be eyeing this gap over here. We have this unfilled gap. I don't think we fully filled this gap over here. It's all the way down to like that 220, 219 area. So we'll see about that just to be safe. So I'm just going to give you guys a heads up about that to be careful, especially if we end up losing 225. Looking at many others, we have ES. So on ES, it could go either way. I'm very open-minded to that possibility. If Jerome Powell launches us and we end up breaking 61.25, I want to see this thing basically break past 61.25 to push up for the 61.50s. A move just like that would be very, very healthy and very, very nice. If we get the opposite, if we can't break past that resistance and we end up losing 60.70, we're looking for 60.45 as our support, then maybe a move lower if that ends up failing us. Now, one thing I'm seeing on ES, which is very possible, and this could just be wishful thinking, not a guarantee, but if Jerome Powell doesn't launch us and we just kind of consolidate here, there's some factors that kind of favor bears a little bit. We have like a rejection off the trend line. We have not been able to break past it yet. And then to add on to this, right, Donald Trump could cause a rug pull with his tariff announcement. It's very probable. Notice that this kind of resembles, I'm not sure if I'm getting this right, but this is like our left shoulder. This is a little bit like a head right here, right? And then this is going to become like a possible right shoulder for a head and shoulders. Okay, not a guarantee, but it's a possibility. You guys can see how this kind of looks like a head and shoulders. Maybe it's a little sloppy, but it's a possibility. So we'll see about that. But even if that's the case, okay, even if we end up getting some kind of rejection, whether it happens or not, that's going to depend on other factors. We had a pattern like this where we keep getting rejections on ES, then we made the next leg higher. this rejection that could be coming, if we do truly reject and make a move down, if we bounce and start breaking past this yellow resistance again, this could just be a dip for the next leg up. I'm not saying the market's going to crash forever. It's just a temporary dip before it tries to bounce. That's all we're looking for, just to be very, very clear. But we'll see if we get that dip or not, guys. It depends on Jerome Powell and Donald Trump. On NQ, very similar setup. So on NQ, notice something. Let's clear all the lines. Notice that there was one instance where we hit 22,400, then we rejected. And since then, we've been rejecting over and over again. So 22,000 rejection, 21,900 rejection, 22,000 rejection, 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 rejection. So it keeps rejecting near 22,000. Okay, patterns tend to repeat, but in this case, we're going to have to see if Jerome Powell causes a pump or dump. It could go either way. Do we break 22,000 to be bullish, or do we come short of 22,000, start dipping back down to 21,500? And then if that's the case, if we can't surpass like these highs and we get a rejection, what's going to happen after Donald Trump announces the tariffs? Will we see a rug pull? We'll have to see, just to be safe, if Donald Trump makes the announcement. So please be careful. But there is that risk of downside if that ends up being the case. For Bitcoin, we have 97,930. If we break this, we're looking for 99,380 is our potential target. It looks a bit more bullish technically, but we'll see, just to be safe, depending on the tariff news. So be very, very patient nonetheless. For Nvda, we look very bullish, but we'll see if Donald Trump says anything about Taiwan. I did see some headlines that mentioned he might announce something. I don't know for sure. Taiwan is one of our bigger trade partners. So we'll see about that. If something's announced involving Taiwan, that could affect us. I think we look very bullish on Nvidia, but we'll see if we get a temporary dip first before it tries to break out for that gap fill, or if we are just going to straight up pump. If we don't lose 133, we could just continue to uptrend. If you see this above like 135, there's a good chance we just fill the gap and we don't get much of a dip. So it all depends on Powell and Trump. It's bullish either way, whether we get a dump first and then a pump, or if we just pump from here. We'll see about that. For Tesla, we're looking bearish, unfortunately. Tesla's very weak. We got lots of bad news. There was a Tesla that got into an accident, despite the fact that it was using FSD. There's also bad news about their sales. Elon Musk's politics was getting a lot of criticism, and then they had to raise one of the prices of their Model X. So looking for this gap fill around 345. Then we have support right here around 340. If we lose the 340s, we're going to be at risk of coming down to fill this next gap all the way down towards the 320s. So please be careful, guys. We're looking weak, very, very bearish right now. No sign of a bounce yet on Tesla. On Apple, we're looking weak on the daily. This is slowing a little bit, but we have not lost support yet. So we had this wedge. We're rejecting here. We're watching 226 if this holds or not. If it does not hold, we could be dipping towards the 222s. To be bullish, I want to see it break past 230. Otherwise, it's favoring downside a bit more for now. Let's go over the rest of these. So Netflix is very flat right now. This could be affected by tariff news, so just be careful. I would like to see this thing basically return back down to about the lower 1,000s before it tries to dip again. So we'll see, just to be safe, but there's going to be a risk of this looking at the current trend. For a few more, MSTR, there was a possible inverse head and shoulders. We'll see how Jerome Powell and the tariff news affects us. As long as we could hold 323, it is possible we dip like this, consolidate, then we eventually try to get bought back up and try to run like this for the inverse head and shoulders. We might retest 323 just in case, so keep that in mind in case we get a dip. And we'll see if we get a big bounce or not. On Celsius, we got this dip. We got to hold right here. I want to see it try to hold this for a retest of this wedge. It needs to bounce here. We got to get that bounce. If not, it's going to be a failed breakout. This is going to continue to fall back down to about the 20 area. I would love to see it get back above 22.5. If not, it's going to continue to fall. For Supermicro, we're looking very bullish, very, very nice move, especially because of the fact that its earnings have been quite good. So with that being said, I think that there's a bullish divergence and we're looking for this imbalance fill. Might cool off a little bit on the R side to reach us like the low 40s before it tries to bounce higher, but it's bullish. It's doing a great job, at least thus far, especially after earnings. For Palantir, we're looking bullish. We're going to be watching to see if we could hit 120. If we lose support right here at 114.8, we could be dipping back down towards like 110. But Palantir is looking bullish. If it dips here, it could try to bounce and go to the 120s. For Rivian has a nice breakout attempt right here. We have to try to hold above 13. If that holds, we're looking for 13.25 or above. If we end up losing 12.75, we could be tipping lower, but overall, there's an inverse head and shoulders. I think there's a good chance we try to continue to push higher. For SoFi, So far has this wedge that's been developing, but we haven't been able to get a break yet. I think I need to redraw this just a little bit just to show you guys how this resistance is technically still holding us back a bit. We have not been able to get a confirmed breakout yet. I'm still thinking that it's kind of stuck here at the trend line. So this depends on tariffs and news like that. There is going to be a risk of us kind of consulting a little bit longer before we finally get the breakout, but we're not ready yet. I would love to see it break past 15.58 to really start pushing. If not, this could continue to fall lower. So I'm going to give this more time to develop. On AMD, we're still kind of weak here. Tariffs may dip this to the low 100s. To be bullish, you want to break past 114. And you also want to break this trend line right here. It's been on rejecting off this white trend line over and over again. So it's technically still on a downtrend. It is trying to base at 107, but there's no confirmation yet that this thing is done. And there's going to be a risk of it dipping lower if we end up getting a negative news. ARM is going to be testing 158. We need to hold this. If not, we could be dipping lower. We're forming kind of like a wedge right here. A little bit bearish of a wedge. So we'll see if we bounce or not. So be very, very careful. We'll see how this ends up developing. Otherwise, this may continue to downtrend a little bit more. Coin looks a little bit more bullish. We do have a gap to fill above, but this depends on some news. As of right now, it's uptrending, so it is favoring that it wants to break past 282 and eventually for 285. Unless we get a spontaneous rug pull, then you want to see it lose 277 to turn back down. Otherwise, it's slowly uptrending for now. Amazon pumped very nicely, but there is one problem. We have a tough resistance at 233, a little bit under 244. So there's this resistance right here is tough. If it breaks this, I'm looking for 236. If it comes short and rejects, we could be returning back down to like 230 or below. So I'm going to be watching to see if we get some kind of dip here. Can we bounce and make a higher low here to bounce higher, or do we end up retesting the low and losing it? I'm going to be watching for a little bit of a dip most likely, and we'll see if we bounce. Meta might be retesting 709, and we'll see if it bounces off that. Microsoft might be retesting 408, and we'll see if we get a bounce or not off of that as well. Google's looking weaker. We could be tipping closer to about this 186 to 185 area, and we'll see if some buyers defend or not. GameStop made a nice move to the upside. I think they just announced some very important things. Going to be looking for an attempt for essentially 27.7, then eventually the 28. AMC has a double bottom looking for essentially 323. DJT is very flat right now. It's not really doing much until we get some more news. So it's completely flat. Give it some time to consolidate at 31. The VIX, it's indecisive. It could go either way depending on the news. We'll see if we get a bigger breakout or not if we're about to get that rejection. There is still that gap to fill way down here in like the 13s. So is this about to like pump first and then start dumping? Is the market about to see a temporary dump before it sees a massive rally? We'll have to see about that. The 10-year and also the dollar, everything's just waiting for basically Jerome Powell and also CPI. So that's going to be on Wednesday. So that's what we're waiting for. With that being said, guys, the markets, although it's been trying to hold up, be careful in case we do get a temporary dip. That's going to be dependent on different factors. We'll see what Jerome Powell says tomorrow during his testimony. So get ready for some volatility. And we'll see what Donald Trump has to say about his new tariffs. Hopefully, it's not too extreme. Hopefully the market does not dump too hard. We'll see about that, but the odds do favor downside once Trump makes that announcement. So please keep that in mind. Anyways, that is it for my video. I want to thank you all so much for listening. So have a good one and peace out.